Welcome back, America. We're here with our friend, Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, House Republican Conference Chair, member of the Armed Services Committee. Elise Stefanik, in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the Democrat Party has decided to serve its radical left-wing kook base and not the American people. Have we ever seen two more radical extremists running for national office in the history of this country?
No, Mark. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are the most radical Democrat ticket in our nation's history. Look at their record. Look at the record of Kamala Harris. She is Joe Biden's open border czar. She owns this catastrophic failure of wide open borders, prioritizing illegals and criminals over law-abiding Americans. People have died in this country, Mark, because of Kamala Harris's role as Joe Biden's open border czar. If you look at both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, they support defunding the police. We saw that when Tim Walz served as governor in Minnesota, and we've seen that when Kamala Harris actually raised money to bail out criminals and has stood for defunding the police. On top of that, this inflation crisis across our country, the deciding vote in the U.S. Senate was Kamala Harris while she was vice president for Joe Biden's Inflation Expansion Act. It's the most radical, most socialist Democrat ticket, and that's why it's so incredibly important that all Americans unify and elect President Donald Trump, who will save this country.
And these radical leftists don't seem to learn a damn thing. Tim Walz is a proud socialist. The fact is, so is Kamala Harris. They don't like to use the word, but that's exactly what they are. They're not capitalists. So her idea for fixing the economy is more spending. This cockamamie plan for $25,000, won't that heat up the housing market? Won't that create more inflation? Won't that drive up the price of houses? And then she's got this idea about gouging. The packages are too small and so forth and so on. Let me ask you this, Congresswoman. When Donald Trump was president, was there gouging? When Donald Trump was president, was there profiteering? When Donald Trump was president, did we have massive inflation? People couldn't afford gasoline, couldn't afford food. Maybe the problem isn't the economy. Maybe the problem isn't businessmen and employees. Maybe the problem is them.
Well, you're exactly right, Mark. And Americans have to ask themselves, were they better off 4 years ago? The answer was absolutely yes. If you look at the economic strength under President Trump, it was the strongest economy in modern history. You saw wage growth. You saw the highest number of individuals working. And yet we see unemployment ticking up under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And importantly, the single biggest economic stress and challenge right now is inflation. And it's a direct result of the trillions of dollars that was spent under Joe Biden working with Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, with Kamala Harris casting that deciding vote for the Inflation Expansion Act. No matter where you go in the country, Mark, whether it's my district in upstate New York, whether it's these key swing districts, key swing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia as well, people are concerned about inflation. They're struggling to buy groceries. They're struggling to make ends meet. They see utilities skyrocketing. You want to talk about Kamala Harris's economic policies. It's trillions of dollars of tax increases on top of the trillions of dollars of tax increases that were included in Kamala Harris's Inflation Expansion Act. She wants to ban fracking across this country. That would devastate hardworking families in Pennsylvania and across this country and only cause a skyrocketing of energy costs. So the choice is very clear. You saw an economic boom under President Trump, and we've seen an economic bust and a crisis under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
And it seems to me that your point is very, very important. Kamala Harris acts like she's not responsible for anything unless it goes well. She acts like she's an observer. She acts like she's the outsider running. She's the problem. Her fingerprints, her DNA are all over this disastrous economy. We even have members of Biden's staff and Biden himself saying, no, she was my lieutenant. She was my right-hand gal. She worked with me on this economy. And then they lie about the economy. You think the American people are going to buy the propaganda that's coming from Washington, D.C.? You think they're going to buy the propaganda by these pollsters and these operators, these grifters that they hire on these campaigns? Oh, inflation's behind us. Oh, the economy's doing well. Isn't one trip to the grocery store going to disprove that?
One trip to the grocery store disproves that. As families struggle to balance their budget on a weekly and monthly basis, people know no matter what the mainstream media says, no matter what the propaganda from Washington, D.C., New York City, leftist socialists is trying to convince the American people that they're doing well economically, people are smart. Voters across this country are smart, and they know that they've seen this inflation cut in. It's a wage cut to every worker across this country because our dollar goes less and less when you go to the grocery store. I am shocked. You look at the price of diapers. You look at the lack of access to baby formula. This has hurt working women in this country, young families in this country, Mark. And to say that Kamala Harris doesn't own it, she owns it lock, stock, and barrel. As I said, she was the deciding vote for the Inflation Expansion Act, which caused the highest rate of inflation in my lifetime. She was the last person in the room when Joe Biden made the decision for the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan that led directly to the loss of 13 soldiers. And we now have 13 Gold Star families who haven't even been mentioned by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. She is the open border czar that Joe Biden designated. She owns this wide open border. All of these issues are top of the mind for voters. And as she tries to run away from her record, it is important that we hold our leaders accountable for their failures. She gets an F on all of these issues. That's why she's unfit to serve as the next commander-in-chief and president of the United States.
When we come back, Elise Stefanik, why is she so obsessed with redistributing wealth from American citizens to illegal aliens? And why is she so obsessed with redistributing wealth from the 60 or 70% of Americans who didn't graduate from a four-year college, from them to college graduates? We'll be right back. Welcome back, America. What is this obsession, Congresswoman Stefanik, that Kamala Harris has with giving hard-earned taxpayers' money to illegal immigrants? They step into the United States, they go on their pathway to legalization and citizenship, and she wants them to have free health care. Now, when you combine that to her Medicare for all and free health care, and Medicare, according to the trustees, isn't going to survive past another 11 or 12 years, she will collapse the system with illegal aliens, meaning senior citizens today, senior citizens for the next 10 years, may not have Medicare. What's that all about?
Well, again, this is how socialist Kamala Harris is. This is the most radical ticket, as you pointed out, Mark, and it's about putting Americans last. She is prioritizing illegal immigrants. She is prioritizing criminals. And ultimately, it's hardworking Americans that will foot the bill. That will be trillions of dollars of tax increases. You pointed out an important issue, and that is protecting and preserving Medicare for our seniors. It's Kamala Harris and Joe Biden that raided Medicare to pay for their green new scam deal in the Inflation Expansion Act. It's Kamala Harris who wants to cancel and take away your private health care insurance to put everyone on government insurance that will only increase health care costs. These are very serious issues for families who already are struggling to make ends meet. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote to cancel your health insurance. It is a vote to move to socialized medicine. It is a vote for trillions of dollars of tax increases. It is a vote for trillions of dollars going to illegal immigrants rather than American citizens. And as voters learn more about her positions, it is important that they know that that is what they're voting for. That is the choice this November, and that's why it's so important. You look at President Trump. He prioritizes hardworking American families. He is advocating for tax reductions, no tax on tips. That was his proposal that he will get done. He has a record of protecting and securing the border. He will deliver that again, and he will deliver economic strength for families and for seniors.
You know, there's a difference between populism and Marxist populism. Donald Trump, in many respects, is a populist with a conservative core. That is, as was Reagan. We serve the people, not some group of people, not some stratum of people, the people. For Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders and AOC and Tim Walz, it's about redistribution of wealth. It's about class warfare. And like most regimes that push that agenda, it's the poor and the middle class that subsidize the rich, that subsidize the bureaucracy, that subsidize the politicians, While they talk about they're for the people, it is the people that they crush. Isn't that exactly what's going on today?
It is exactly what's going on. That is today's Democrat Party, Mark. It's to crush hardworking Americans. If you look at inflation, who that impacts the most, it impacts every American, but it hurts those in the low and middle income classes. And those are the hardest working people in this country. They're working to make ends meet, where the trip to the grocery store, when you see a significant increase of price of bread, price of eggs, just price of groceries, meat, that is cutting away into their hard-earned wages as they're working to achieve their American dream, to give their kids a better opportunity. And yet Kamala Harris wants to do trillions of dollars of new taxes. Kamala Harris thinks that she can make better decisions about how to spend money through the government, a bloated, trillion-dollar increases in government spending, rather than allowing the American people to make those decisions for themselves and their families. Look at this massive redistribution of wealth they're trying to pursue with the bailout of student loans. There's no such thing as a free tuition in this country. The people that are footing that bill are constituents in my district who did not take out those loans, went into the workforce, are working so hard every single day in the trades often, and yet they're footing the bill for these radicals, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans, which is only costing a skyrocketing of tuition for families who are already working. And what about those families who worked hard to repay their loans? What about those graduates who worked hard to repay the loans? So it's a massive redistribution of wealth. It is socialism. That is why they're the most radical ticket ever in our nation's history.
You can't kill the golden goose and expect the golden goose to keep laying golden eggs. And that's their problem. They have their hands around the throat of that goose and they keep squeezing it. The other thing is their absolute dishonesty to the American people. We know what causes inflation: government. We know what causes unemployment: government. We know what causes the price of gasoline to go up: Biden and Harris choking off our energy sector. We know who's responsible for all these things. These things were not happening when Donald Trump was president of the United States. All of a sudden, businesses are gouging. All of a sudden, there's profiteering. All of a sudden, all these things are happening. But under Donald Trump, they did not. Elise Stefanik, I want to thank you for everything you do. You're a great patriot. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, Mark.